Alright guys, here's the Atari 600 XL that I was talking about in my previous video. Now this is the one that only has 16K of RAM. And I'm about to show you what happens when you try to play games that require the 64K. So, what I'm do is flip this thing on. And I've got the Atari Max cartridge in there, as you can see. And this is the actual menu screen that you get. Now I'll go ahead and review this cartridge later on. This is just to show you real quick what happens. Now say if I want to load Pac-Man loads just fine, and you can play it and everything's good to go. Okay, but that's because this game doesn't require 64K of RAM. So let me go ahead and reset or turn it off here. And there we go. Now let's try something. Let's try like pole position. Even this spreadsheet home calc, that spreadsheet program, that requires 64K. So I'll show you that. And this is the thing you get. This selection requires 64K of RAM, so it doesn't allow you to play it. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to install the RAM chips into here to basically make this as powerful as an Atari 800 XL, and we should be able to play these games after I install these chips. So let me go ahead and get to it. Alright guys, and this is what you're going to need. You're going to need your Atari 600 XL, of course. You're going to need a soldering iron, preferably one that's only 15 watt. You can switch in between 15 and 30 watt. You're going to need an IC puller. Not really a necessity, but it actually is pretty nice to have one of these to pull those IC chips out, because you'll have to pull the old RAM chips out of their sockets. You're going to need some solder, a few little pieces of wire for the jumpers, and of course a Phillips screwdriver. That's about all the tools you're really going to need to do this. So let me go ahead and get the chips so I can show you those. Alright guys, so what you're going to need is this HM50464 dash. There's actually a dash 15 after this. You need the 15 nanosecond memory chips, and this is them right here. Later on I'll go into macro mode when I actually need to, but just two little tiny chips. Okay guys, first thing you're going to do is take out the screws on the bottom of the Atari. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And there's 4 screws. Now keep in mind, there's one screw that's longer. You got to remember where it goes. It goes right here in this corner. All the rest of them are about that size. As you can see there. So, now we're going to flip this thing over. And we're going to open her up. And there we go. Now this is connected, the keyboard is connected with a big old ribbon cable. And I guess this is for grounding here, so you wouldn't ground out the computer or give it an ESD charge shock. Just go ahead and disconnect that from the motherboard as well. And then just pull this cable, this ribbon cable out. And then you have your keyboard assembly all taken off. I'm going to set that aside. Now I actually already took the screws out of this RF shielding here. So, but there's one here, there's one here, one here, one here, one here, and one here that you'll have to take out. But like I said, I already did that, so don't have to do that again. But I did bin these tabs back down. There's little tabs that keep all the RF shielding in. I just bin those back up and take the RF shield off. Alright, and here is the motherboard. Now as you guys can see, these two chips right here, those two are the memory chips that we're going to replace with these two. So, and then we're going to run a couple jumpers as well that we're going to end up soldering. So let me go ahead and get to that. Okay, now as you guys can kind of see here, and the lighting sucks down in my basement, the shadow for the cameras there. What we're going to do, you're going to take these IC pullers here, and we're just going to pull these old RAM chips right out of there. Now, sometimes they're a little hard to get out because they've been stuck in there for 30 some years, but that one wasn't too bad. And this will be the second one we're going to take out. This one's going to be a hard one, I think. There we go. And there's the second one. So those are our two 16K RAM chips that we just took out. Now, we're just going to go ahead and take these other ones that we got and place those in the sockets those ones just came out of. Now keep in mind where pin 1 was. I forgot to tell you guys that. Pin 1 is actually right here and right here. And we're going to stick those bad boys in there, which can be kind of a pain sometimes because they don't always want to match up with the sockets. You want to make sure you get all the little legs inside the socket and then push down. And I'll take the other chip and do the exact same thing. Make sure all the little legs are in. And then push down. And there we go. We have our two chips installed now. So now comes the little harder part. We actually have to do the jumpers, and I'll go ahead and show you where all that goes here in just a moment. Now we're actually going to have to pull out a couple more chips to be able to perform this, because we have to bend the pins up off of those chips and actually jump them. So, and then this resistor right here we're going to have to solder a jumper onto as well. So let me go ahead and get everything set up for that. Alright guys, and we're looking at the same thing. Basically these are the two chips, this one and this one are the two we just replaced. So now what we want to do is pull these two, and these are your basically your logic gates right here. These are your RAM chips, and these are your logic gates. And what we're going to do, we're going to pull this one here, which is U5, and this one's U6 down here. U5, we're actually going to go to pin 3 and pull it up and solder a wire onto that, and it's going to go down to a jumper right down here. And this one here, we're going to take pin 10 off of it, and it's going to go to a jumper right down here. So let me go ahead and do that. We're going to pull those chips out, and we're going to basically bend those pins so we can solder onto them. So I'm going to have them like that, to where the pins are just bent up like that. I think that just makes it a little easier there. So, and then we're going to have one more IC. It's going to be U16, which is this one here that we're going to have to pull up, and pin 8 on this one is going to have to be pulled up, and that's the one that's going to have to go to this resistor right here. And I'll explain what all this does in a little while. That one was actually easy to take out. Alright, so pin 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. As you can see, I just bent up pin 8 So, and you're going to solder a jumper onto that one as well. So let me go ahead and get my soldering iron all ready and everything, and we'll go from there. I should have had it warming up this whole time, but I spaced it out. Okay guys, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and solder the wires onto these ICs. Like so. And I'm just going to wrap these wires around and solder them on. So let me go ahead and do that, and I'll show you the ending product here. Okay, now as you guys can see, I have soldered the RAM chips, and I've also soldered, or actually they're not the RAM chips, those are the logic gate, and I've also soldered this other chip. I'm not sure exactly what that one does. I didn't look it up. I didn't look up the data sheet for that one, so I'm not quite sure what this chip is. But yeah, I just went ahead and soldered those wires to the pins, and now what I'm going to do is go ahead and insert these back into the motherboard, and we're going to go from there. Okay, as you guys can see here, I went ahead and stuck the chips back in. This is U5 with pin 3, U6 with pin 10, and what was this other one over here? U16 with pin 8. And what's going to happen, these jumpers are actually going to run over here, and this one's going to go over to this resistor over here that I've already pulled up, and that's going to solder onto the end of that resistor there. So let me go ahead and do that, and I'll show you the aftermath. Okay guys, now as you can see, this pin 8 over here on the U16 went over to this resistor over here. Now what you do is you actually solder it onto the end of that resistor that's sitting there. And what I did was just put some electrical tape over it just in case it wants to move and short out on either this pin or the other resistor right next to it. Not a good thing. And then this pin 10 right here goes to this first little pad right here, and then pin 3 right here goes to the second little pad from your right. Alright guys, as you can see, it's reading all the RAM, so that's a good thing. Everything is green and not red, which is another good thing, because if you've got any red blocks down here, that means you got bad RAM. And everything's green, so we're good to go. Now you might notice that there's only 48 blocks down here of RAM. Each one of these blocks represents 1K. Basically, the other, what is that, 16K, is actually used up by the system itself, so you're not able to see that in the memory test. And in fact, I learned something new. If you do the memory test with either a cartridge in, or if you go from basic into the memory test or into the self-diagnostic mode, it won't read the entire 48 lines. It'll only read 40. It'll stop here. So I was kind of sweating that for a minute until I realized that you have to go straight into the diagnostic mode with nothing plugged into the Atari at all, and then it reads all the RAM. Apparently basic takes up 8 kilobytes of RAM in the system, and it doesn't show up in here if you go into basic. So let me go ahead and load some games and show you guys. Alright guys, let's see if this thing works. We're going to go to that home calc again and see if it boots up. And there we go. Alright. So, as you guys can see here, like Pole Position's another game that didn't work with only 16K of RAM. You needed 64K, and it's working just fine as well. So, I'm actually kind of stoked, even though I can't drive with one hand in this freaking Wico freaking joystick. Yeah, definitely really cool. So, I am stoked about this. Now I just need to put this back together so that my video looks a lot better, because with the RF shield off it looks like crap. But yeah, definitely guys. So if you get an Atari 600 XL, you can upgrade the RAM up to 64K just like a Commodore 64, and it's actually not a bad little system. So with all that said and done, and me about to wreck my car again, I bid you guys adieu, and peace out. Have a good one.